There's a thought you've been avoiding, not because it's wrong, but because once you admit it, you can't pretend anymore. What are you afraid to admit to yourself? Not to anyone else, not out loud, just to yourself. There are things we avoid saying, not because they aren't true, but because once we admit them, we can't pretend anymore. I think most of us carry at least one quiet truth like that. Something we've known for a long time, but learned how to step around. Not because we're dishonest, but because we're tired. Because we're afraid of what that truth might ask of us. Sometimes it's not a big secret. It's not dramatic. It's just a feeling that keeps coming back, a sense that something isn't right, that something doesn't quite fit anymore. And instead of facing it, we get good at staying busy. We keep moving. We stay productive. We give ourselves reasons not to stop, because stopping might mean hearing the thing we've been avoiding. I've had moments like that. Moments when everything looked fine from the outside, but inside, there was this quiet tension. Not pain exactly, more like a pressure. As if some part of me was trying to speak, and another part of me kept saying, "Not now." Maybe you know that feeling too. It shows up when you're alone, late at night, when the noise fades. A thought crosses your mind, and before you can finish it, you distract yourself. You reach for your phone. You turn on something to listen to. You tell yourself you're just tired. Because admitting the truth, even silently, can feel like opening a door you're not ready to walk through. What if you admit you're not as happy as you thought you'd be by now? What if you admit you've outgrown something or someone? What if you admit you're staying because leaving feels too scary? What if you admit you chose safety over what you actually wanted? Those aren't easy things to sit with. So we tell ourselves stories. This is just how life is. I should be grateful. Everyone feels this way. And maybe that's partly true. But sometimes those explanations are just ways to keep the truth at a distance. Because admitting something doesn't automatically change anything. But it does change how honestly you see your life. And that can feel dangerous. If you admit you're unhappy, what does that say about all the choices you made to get here? If you admit you're tired of being strong, what happens to the version of you everyone relies on? If you admit you want something different, what happens to the life you've already built? So instead, you learn how to live with a quiet contradiction. You function, you perform, you meet expectations, and you tell yourself you'll deal with the rest later. But later has a way of stretching out. Years can pass that way, and the truth doesn't disappear. It just waits. It waits for moments when you're vulnerable enough to hear it. Sometimes it shows up as restlessness, sometimes as numbness, sometimes as exhaustion that doesn't make sense. Not because you're weak, but because carrying something unspoken takes energy. There's a kind of fatigue that comes from holding yourself together while pretending everything is fine. And the longer you avoid the truth, the heavier that fatigue becomes. Admitting something to yourself doesn't mean you have to act on it right away. It doesn't mean you have to make changes. It doesn't mean you have to explain anything to anyone. Sometimes it just means being honest in a quiet moment. letting yourself think the thought all the way through. Letting yourself finish the sentence in your own mind. I'm not okay with this. I want something different. I'm scared. I don't know if this is the life I want anymore. Those sentences don't demand solutions. They don't ask for courage. They just ask for honesty. And honesty, even when it's quiet, can be a relief. Not because it fixes things, but because you're no longer arguing with yourself. You don't have to admit everything at once. You don't have to label it. Just noticing what you've been avoiding is enough for now. Because the truth doesn't need to be rushed. It just needs to be acknowledged. And maybe the thing you're afraid to admit isn't something that will destroy your life. Maybe it's something that's been waiting to be seen, so you can finally stop carrying it alone. You don't have to answer this question tonight. Just let it be there. What are you afraid to admit to yourself?